All right, Liz. Well, excited to have you on the WeHero Learn podcast and excited to learn more about Heifer. Obviously, we've worked together in the past, but all the people that are watching this, have heard of Heifer, I'm sure, but are going to benefit greatly by learning more. So maybe just a great starting point, just an overview of you, your role, your background, and I guess in general, the work at Heifer.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And thanks so much for having me here today. I love talking about Heifer, and I especially love the idea of talking to my peers through this platform. So it's a pleasure. So my name is Liz Ellis. My current title is Corporate Brand Partnerships Manager for Heifer International. So I've actually been with Heifer for 15 years in multiple very different roles. I started with Heifer originally actually as a cook, kind of a farm to table cook. We had a learning center up in Massachusetts where all kinds of students and the public would come to learn about our work and to learn sort of about how they can take action, which of course includes food systems and food choices. So that was just a pleasure for me. I did that for many years. I'm still a very big food geek. And my whole life, really, honestly, ever since I was a teenager, it very much revolved around food and agriculture. It's just always been a passion of mine. So finding this job with Heifer 15 years ago, being able to use the skills that I had to integrate into an organization that I already fully loved and believed in tremendously was a true joy and has been ever since. So throughout that, I kind of transitioned more into some outreach and education. And then the past 2 years, I've been in this role, which today is my role is basically to work with companies and corporate partners to find the best ways to solve and reach all of our goals. So I do a lot in sort of CSR and ESG and look for alignment with companies and figure out ways that Heifer can reach the audiences that they're looking for. And obviously speaking to companies through WeHero is my very favorite way to do that, because I get to really kind of dig in some of the ways that we work and really have that conversation with several people at a time, which is amazing. So Heifer's mission is to work with communities to end hunger and poverty and to care for the earth. And that's been our mission for quite a long time. Heifer actually was started back in 1944 by a man named Dan West, who is a farmer from Indiana. And he was a very faithful man and a pacifist, and he was giving out food aid to communities in the form of powdered milk, basically, for families that had really lost their farms and their livelihoods. And so people would line up each day, and at a certain point, Dan West had to sort of decide who was going to get this aid, and he was very concerned about what would happen when it dried up. And so he had this sort of inspiration of not a cup, but a cow. And what that idea was that if he could provide, and Heifer could provide livestock and sort of agricultural support to families, that they could use that to really rebuild, to have a long-term source of nutrition and income. And so that's very much what Heifer's done throughout all of these decades. And today, of course, our model is a little bit more developed and complex, but it's still based on the idea that we know that farmers are really the key, small farmers are the key to ending hunger and poverty.
Yeah, I mean, I think that model really resonates with me and the approach of not only immediate need, but long-term need as well, and hopefully solving it. And just for a quick overview, how much of your work is done in the US versus abroad, and where abroad is it happening?
Yeah, great question. So Heifer has worked in over 125 countries. But in the past several years, decade at least, 15 years, that's been focused a lot for a number of reasons. And so today we work in 21 countries, and that includes the US. So there's several places in Central America, Guatemala, Honduras. We also work in South America and Ecuador, in mostly East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, but also a little bit in West Africa and Senegal. We are in Cambodia and Bangladesh and Nepal and India, and I'm sure I'm leaving a couple countries out there. I'm sure I am. And then we do work in the US, and specifically our work in the US is focused a little bit in sort of the Mid-South area, because Heifer is based in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we have a fantastic and beautiful 1,200-acre ranch, which is actually where I live right here. It's called Heifer Ranch in Perryville, Arkansas, and the ranch is specifically a regenerative ranch. So they're doing everything they can to rebuild soil, sequester carbon, preserve biodiversity, and to also teach other farmers how to do that in a way that they can also earn the best income from what they produce.
Yeah, I find that part of your model so fascinating, and it's, right now it seems like that's focused in the US to have an income increase impact on individuals, but also an environmental impact. when you think about your work in the developing world, is so much of that these people just need food and income to survive that maybe eventually will bring them the regenerative agriculture, or do you try to start their livelihood based on the regenerative agriculture in the developing world as well?
That's a really great question. Yeah. So I think you could very much say that the work we do abroad is regenerative in a broad sense. I think the definition of regenerative agriculture is still a little bit up for debate. There's certain precepts that I think tend to come along with it, and for the most part, those are all true. We say that our work abroad is all climate smart agriculture. So, I mean, you heard in our mission that caring for the earth is right there. I mean, that's half of our mission, right? So everything we do and have done for decades is focused on particularly doing no harm to the earth, but also to practicing agriculture in a way that benefits the ecosystem and the soil. So multiple practices like cover cropping and reforestation and agroforestry and managing livestock in a way that is not harmful, that can actually be very beneficial. That's incorporated into all of our work. I mean, our first goal is to support these farmers. So their livelihoods are first in our mind and always will be. But along with that, we truly believe that these two things go hand in hand, and that climate smart agriculture is the key to successful long-term development work.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense to me, and I think I like that two-pronged approach. I guess how do you measure your impact? When companies are coming to you asking, hey, if we donate $1 million to Heifer, what's the impact of that? And how do you measure that across the three different metrics? Short-term, long-term, and I guess the environmental aspects of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that historically Heifer struggled with for a little while. It wasn't because Heifer's been around for so long, our model wasn't necessarily originally designed in a way that was easily measurable. However, over the past, again, 10, 15 years, it's been quite a focus. So today we have an extraordinary monitor and evaluation team who have established baseline metrics and who measure them in multiple areas. So some of the strongest ones, some of the ones obviously that we share and like to talk about the most are around livelihoods. Living income is a really, really critical one to what we do. Helping farmers to get really way beyond that poverty line, whatever that means, is fundamental to what we do. So for a long time, Heifer, like so many organizations, was operating sort of using a global poverty line, whether it was $1.25 or $1.90. Obviously that changed throughout time. But there was obviously a lot of concern that two things, that one, that was a little bit arbitrary because every country, every community, sort of their economics are different. But also that global poverty line wasn't enough to have families get to a point where they were resilient, where they could sustain, the ups and downs of life. And so these days, our MBELs, we call them Monitoring, Evaluation, Learning Team, did an incredible work to establish what the living income really was, what an annual income was in each country we work in that could afford families, obviously diversified nutritional diet, safe and reliable housing, clothes, that all kids could be sent to school, that medical care was available when needed, but also, and this is really important, that families could put a little bit aside, that they were earning enough, not just to cover basic expenses, but to be able to save some for two things. I mean, obviously none of us know what is ahead tomorrow, what could happen. And we all need a little bit of savings to make sure that we can deal with that and hopefully start to rebuild after we've gone through whatever it is, but also so that there might be a little bit to reinvest in their farms and their businesses. We really look at what our farmers do is these are their small businesses and they need a little bit to grow them in order to continue on that path, even beyond a living income. So that's a huge one that we do. We've worked a lot recently in establishing a gender equity framework. So we've seen for such a long time, I mean, some of the things that have impacted me most personally are the stories of how women's lives have been so radically changed after working with Heifer. So many stories of women who were, barely able to leave their houses and certainly not necessarily literate, all the way to a place where they were traveling around, giving advice to others and helping others in communities surrounding them. So it's extraordinary work. It's been a huge goal of ours for a long time, but we haven't really been able to quantify the impact of that. And obviously it's beyond quantifying, but so we've been working a lot very recently with some advisors on establishing a way to measure that, to really track it and to see the actual impact it's having. Other ways we track, the ranch where I'm at, Heifer Ranch in Arkansas, has just become a a hub of the Savory International Network, which is a global organization of farms and ranches that are practicing the regenerative agriculture at the very highest level. And part of becoming a Savory hub is learning and being able to practice ecological outcome verification. So it's a way to measure the impact that these farming practices have. So it's one thing to sort of say, I can look out the window and I can see the difference just in how green things are and the diversity of animals and insects, but it's another thing to measure that. And so we measure not only soil health, carbon content, organic matter, but also biodiversity and water cycles. And there's multiple ways that we do, as you said, short-term and long-term impact. And that carries true really throughout Heifer's work. Yeah, so I mean, impact is huge for us, and measuring that and be able to tell people, not only our donors, first of all, because we don't want donors just to give money and sort of feel like maybe they're involved. We want them to know what they're doing, where their money's going, and so being able to share that, particularly over time when people are deeply invested, is absolutely an ultimate goal of ours. And also, this last 18 months, COVID obviously took a toll just in about every industry, and unfortunately, the farmers we work with are no different. And a lot of, they took a lot of hits due to supply chain problems and just from multiple directions. And so we are tracking that too. It's not in the trajectory that we want to see across the board, but we need to know what the impact is so that we can correct for that. And then in the future, we can potentially, do things possibly differently and focus even stronger in certain areas to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Well, I love everything you're doing to track the impact. It's such a hard thing to do when it sounds like you're involved in such a complex mission and solving so many needs. We're obviously an impact first organization, so we love that. And I think I'm personally really excited to see, because right now you can track the one-off impact, but doing this for the next 20 years, you'll be able to track, what we call the ripple effect impact.
Exactly.
Of that woman who you were able to empower, to leave the house and go act as a mentor to others. What impact did that have? And it may, frankly, we think we're often underreporting impacts, and a lot of nonprofits are right now. Obviously, it's safer to do that, but we're excited to see the long-term impact be able to really expand. And, when you donate, maybe in 2040, when someone donates $1 million to Heifer, they'll know, hey, that's not only going to empower these 10 women. Historically, that's empowered an extra 15 women through the mentorship program. And it's really cool that you guys are starting to track that. And I'm sure businesses are asking about that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, they want it. Just businesses are really coming to realize that the power. I can't speak for them, but I think they're even more vocally talking about how they recognize their own power in changing the world and protecting the climate and in trying to reduce hunger and poverty. And I think, we want to be able to show them that this is the right investment for them. And I love that you mentioned sort of the further impacts, because that's something that's very special to Heifer. For as long as I know, one of the precepts of Heifer's work has been something called passing on the gift, which it's a cornerstone of ours. And it basically, in the simplest way, it means that if a family, let's say they receive livestock like goats, the first, usually female kid goat that's born will be passed on to another family, like completely free of charge, no strings attached, but it is actual contract that families sign. And it may be to somebody in their village that they know, or it may be to somebody, 100 miles away that they've never met. The ceremonies of passing on the gift are these incredibly emotional and beautiful experiences. But that passing on the gift, Heifer's done studies like learning that on average happens up to 9 times over and over, and can even go like 20 generations. And it's not just animals, it's not just physical inputs, but it's also training and education and microloans and cooperative support. And so really that multiplier effect that Heifer has it's literally exponential. And I think we've done a pretty good job of tracking it, but like you said, the impact is actually even really greater than the numbers that we put down.
Yeah, and I think that another reason that I love that pay it forward model that you have is as corporate people dealing with corporate volunteers and corporate donors, we believe in so much that the individual, the more empathy they feel for these people they're supporting, the more they're going to want to support. And I can think of no one who has more empathy than someone that's gone through that and knows that they're going to change someone's life by giving them this goat. And so not only you're just creating a ton of net promoters of what you're doing in such a strong way. And that the ripple effects of that are incredible.
Absolutely. One of the things about Heifer that stayed the same, has not changed regardless of how we track everything. And even if our model is shifted a little bit, is that Heifer always operates on a sort of values-based development model, meaning that the communities we work with, before they even really start with working with Heifer, they have a chance to really focus on what is most important to them, where they want to see themselves go, what assets they have. It's not just what they don't have, but what do they have, and where do their dreams lead them? And that is what actually really guides the work in every community. And so I think that that's really true. I mean, this work is being done by the farmers themselves. We're a facilitator basically. And that's what I really love about it. I mean, it really is teaching a person to fish, as we always say, but even more than that. I mean, these people are heroes, and they're doing the hard work. And I think it's great that we get to, there's wonderful resources on Heifer, on our blog and our magazine, of real stories of people that just, blow my mind every time. So I fully agree. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Now, I grew up thinking of Heifer as something my grandmother would give me every year, give an animal and you get a certificate. How much of that still drives your organization's funds versus company donations, corporate involvement? I guess, how do you see that transitioning in the future as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something I think about a lot, and Heifer thinks about a lot. So currently, I think it's about 80% of our net income is from individual donations, from those catalogs, from Give a Goat or Give a Hive of Honeybees, which is huge. And that has been our bread and butter. There's no question. Those families whose tradition it is, the communities who share that. I mean, it's just been enormous. I mean, Heifer has built so much of our work on that incredible loyalty and that model. However, of course, just like any organization, any company, we realize that we have to diversify that you cannot depend on one income source. I mean, we were lucky enough that our donors just came out like crazy, in droves over COVID to support the work we're doing, because they understand the impact of it and they're so supportive of it. But whether it's good times or bad times, you need to understand that your funding's coming from multiple sources, because we can't let the farmers we work with down. So yeah, we're definitely working very consciously to sort of really broaden our work with corporations, particularly in cause marketing and global partnerships and alliances. We've built an incredibly wonderful impact investing department. We're really focused in on institutional building. Yeah, looking at really, I mean, these are things we've always done a little bit, but we're really investing in it now to make sure that we have the most solid foundation possible moving forward.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people probably wish they had that individual support, because I think that's, it's really hard to get that much, grassroots support for an organization. And yeah, obviously everything's a balance, right? But I think a lot of people wish they had that versus having a few corporate donors. Obviously you want both.
Absolutely. I mean, and time and time again, I'll say that, my joy to work with Heifer over 15 years, of course, I've spoken to just thousands of people, and time again, the people that know and love Heifer the most are those who's, it's been a part of their family, and it's a part of their history and really who they are. And that is incredible. And that is something you cannot build or replicate. That's in Heifer's DNA. And we are so incredibly grateful for that and proud of that.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And this is obviously a little more of a challenging question, but one we always like to ask. How does Heifer think about financial transparency? With all different stakeholders, with companies, with individual donors, with the people you're supporting. How does your nonprofit think about that and handle the transparency part of it?
Yeah, it's also a really wonderful question. Something we're very proud of, actually. So I mentioned our values-based development model before, and that's kind of that's designed around what we call our 12 cornerstones of just and sustainable development. Passing on the gift is one of those, if not maybe the premier one. But one of those cornerstones is accountability, and that is across the board. That is with our project participants and our offices and every single department in Heifer. And of course, one of the most important parts of that is financial transparency. I mean, we never are hiding anything and never have been. And in fact, it's one of our great sources of pride that I think we've scored 97 or 98 out of 100 in Charity Navigator for our financial transparency. So So that's pretty great.
That's not easy to do either.
No, yeah, I know, yeah, exactly. It's very rigorous. Our financial department, I mean, all credit goes to them for years historically being, really on the forefront of that and ahead of the game. We rely on our donors. We trust them, and we're so grateful for them, individual corporations across the board. And, what better way to sort of thank them and show them that we're the best stewards of their dollars than to show them exactly where it's going.
Yeah. All right, a few fun questions to end this. It's 2050. You're still living on the ranch. It's Halloween time, 2050.
Okay.
How is your mission different, and how are you delivering impact in how do you think you're going to be delivering impact at that point?
Oh, good question. I would say our mission is not going to change until hunger and poverty has been eradicated. That would be amazing if we can say that by 2050. Then if that is true, or even if it has been greatly lessened, which is certainly something we can work towards. I think really that climate, water access, those are going to be the big things. I mean, that's regardless is what we're going to be focusing on, as well as gender equity and equity across the board, diversity and equity. But basically, we can't, food systems rely on climate. There's no question. There's some indoor farming you can do, but we have to be doing this in a way that is holistic and considers the entire planet. And so I think that our mission is the same. I think our work will be even more focused on making sure that there's plenty of access to healthy food and water and a safe and decent place to live for everyone.
Yeah. Okay. How about this one? What is your favorite meal to cook on the ranch?
Oh God. Okay. Wow. Well, this is my wheelhouse because I am. So I actually, I don't like to get too personal here, but I actually am a vegan myself. I believe deeply in the responsible use of livestock agriculture because I believe it can actually really heal the planet in many ways. However, I have a choice to, not to eat meat. And so I love to do that. I like to cook whatever's seasonal. So, I'll just tell you right now what I'm making. I've got a bunch of pumpkins from Halloween some of which I've already roasted and have prepped up, and some great greens actually. So on the ranch here, they plant all different kinds of crops for forage for the cows and for the sheep as well. And some of those crops some of them are mini pumpkins, little gourds, but also some of them are just like wonderful kind of collard type greens. And so I went out the other day and just went into a cow pasture, I kid you not, and just harvested a bunch of greens. We also have an incredible organic garden here too, but I think it's even funnier to harvest greens out of a cow pasture. So I did that. So I got those in the fridge. Tonight I'm going to make pumpkin and greens kind of quesadillas, and I have some pinto beans and green beans that I'm making on the side. I think so. For me, it's just being inspired by what we have. Like I have radishes are coming into season now, and greens and pumpkins. So that always changes. It's like asking me what my favorite band is. It sort of depends on the time and the moment. But anything that's local and fun and full of veggies and fruits is my favorite.
Okay, well, I'm going to get a direct flight from San Francisco Airport right now because that sounds amazing.
Please come on out. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, and very impressive about the vegan. I have elected not to eat beef, but I think going further to be a vegan is a goal. But when you're not as much of an inspirational cook as yourself, it's a little harder to make that. Final question. We're going to give you $1,000. What nonprofit, different than Heifer, are you going to donate that money to?
Different than Heifer. It's a really great question. Well, I love Kiva. I love investing and reinvesting. I love Donors Choose because I like just, really reading the stories and having that kind of direct impact. I myself give to also a lot of the Humane Society and the ASPCA because I have a great concern for animal welfare. But I also think, I think anything Oxfam, the UN, I think Heifer is together with an incredible team of nonprofits working to build sustainable food systems to end hunger and poverty. And I think that I would donate to that as well. So I think no, that's hard to say. I don't know. I have
don't worry. This is everybody's answer is actually like I asked for the one and they're really like, well, hard. I've got 9 for you.
Yeah, it's a really hard one. There's so many, and also World Wildlife Fund and all of the organizations, amazing organizations out there protecting our seas and the planet are the top of my heart. So yeah, a lot. There's several out there that I really respect, and I'm grateful for the work that they do.
Yeah, this is why everyone in the nonprofit space should just be given $1 million, and that would all just go right back to
Amen.
an amazing group of nonprofits.
I hear that.
Well, Liz, I appreciate the time today. Is there any last minute words, or how can people get in touch with you and get in touch with Heifer if they see this and want to reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone can email me directly. It's just liz.ellis, ELLIS, at Heifer, HEIFER.org. Or I'm right on LinkedIn. That's a great way to connect. Please reach out to me directly. I love to have these conversations and to talk about anything related to Heifer or just the work that we do or the work that corporations are doing that fits in, and just anyone interested. So please do connect. And yeah, I just want to thank you. I want to thank all of the amazing companies that work with WeHero to engage their employees in all the work that all of these nonprofits are doing to make the world a better place. So my gratitude, and thanks again for inviting me to talk to y'all.
Yeah, it was our pleasure, Liz. Thank you very much.